We are now live.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Welcome to this meeting of the Place Overview Committee. I'm Councillor Joyce Barrow, Chair of the committee. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public will be able to hear the audio of the meeting and view the papers shown on the screen. This meeting is being held using remote technology, and should any committee member experience technical difficulties during the meeting, they should immediately ring the support telephone number they have already been supplied with. Everyone is requested to mute their microphones unless asked to speak. Please only use the chat function to indicate the desire to speak. Do not use it for anything else. As Chair, I will interpret the Council's existing standing orders in light of the requirements of remote participation, with advice from the monitoring officer prior to making a ruling. At the start of the meeting, I will ask members of the committee to confirm their presence and any disclosable pecuniary interest they have in any of the items on the agenda. I will ask everyone invited to speak during the meeting, including members of the committee and officers, to introduce themselves each time they speak. Members are reminded to disclose any pecuniary interest in any matters to be discussed which is not included in the Register of Interests, and leave the meeting prior to the matter being discussed. I'll start with myself. I have no interest to declare. I'm now going to read the members' names, and if they can confirm that they are present and whether they have interests or not. Andy Waddington.
No interests.
Julian Dean. Julian? Are you there, Julian? Okay. Nick Bardsley is substituting for Rob Gittings.
Yeah, present and no pecuniary interest, Chairman.
Simon Harris.
Present, Deputy Portfolio of Highways and Transport for Shropshire Council.
Roy Allcroft is substitute for Paul Milner.
Yes, present and no pecuniary interests.
Dan Morris.
I'm present and no pecuniary interest.
Pam Mosley.
Present, no interests.
William Parr. William Parr. Paul Wynne.
Present and no pecuniary interests.
Can I check, please, that the following are here? Portfolio holders, officers and guests have been able to join the meeting. Councillor Steve Davenport, Portfolio holder for Highways.
Here.
Officers Mark Barrow, Executive Director of Place.
Here, Chairman.
Andy Wild, Interim Head of Highways.
Here, Chairman.
Steve Brown, Head of Transport and the Environment.
Here, Chairman.
Steve Taylor, Team Leader, Performance, Intelligence and Policy.
Here, Chairman.
Gareth Prophet, Senior Communications Officer. Gareth Prophet? No. Daniel Webb, Scrutiny Officer.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Sarah Townsend, Committee Officer and Minute Taker.
Here, Chair.
The other councillors that are going to be in attendance are Councillor Nat Green.
Present.
And Councillor David Vesmer.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Have you any pecuniary interests at all?
Councillor Green, no pecuniary interest
No,
to
that's
declare.
fine. I just thought I should ask. I shall now turn to the items on the agenda. Item 1 is apologies.
Sorry,
Yeah?
Steve Davenport here. Just to confirm that Andy Wild is the head of highways, not the stand-in.
Right, okay, thank you. That's well pointed out. Thank you very much. Item 1, we've had the apologies, which are Councillor Rob Gittins and Paul Milner. Nick Bardsley and Roy Aldcroft are substituting. Do we have Officer? No, we don't. Sorry, Steve Smith's also given his apologies, hasn't he? Can the committee officer confirm if there are any other apologies or substitutions?
No, that's everything, Chairman.
Thank you. In that case, we'll move on to item 2, which we've already covered. So we will move on to item 3, which is the minutes of the last meeting. I move that the minutes of the Place Overview Committee meeting held on the 5th of November 2020, as circulated with the agenda papers, be signed as a correct record. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Chair. Paul Wynne.
Thank you. I will now accept these minutes as a true record unless anyone else indicates differently. Thank you. In that case, I'll move on. I'd like to now move the minutes of the Place Overview Committee held on the 9th of December 2020, as circulated with the agenda papers, be signed as a correct record. Can I have a seconder, please?
I can second again. Were you there, Chairman? Can you propose that?
Yes, I have proposed it. You seconded, Paul, have you?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I will now accept these minutes as a true record unless anyone else indicates differently.
Joyce, sorry, I was just going to say, I don't think you were at that meeting, were you, for the December? That was the one that Claire Wild chaired.
Oh, right, yes, that's a very good point. Could someone who's there propose it, please?
Sorry, Chair, that's what I was saying. So you want me to propose that because I was there, okay? I'll propose that.
Okay, and do we have a seconder? Can we have a seconder, please?
I'll second them, Joyce.
Thank you very much, Dan. Okay, I'll now accept those minutes as a true record unless anyone else indicates differently. We'll move on to item 4, public question time. We have no public questions, so we'll move on to item 5, member question time. We've got 2 member questions, and the questions and responses provided will be added to the web page for this meeting. The first question is from Councillor Nat Green, and I invite him to read his question.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the question is that during the recent floods, could it be confirmed the number of drain clearing machines that the county has available, and how many drains or miles of drains are left to clean? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll invite Andy Wild to respond, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So in response to that, we have 92,000 gullies and catch pits on our highways network. Our contractor Kia have 4 gully emptying units, and we undertake routine operations every year. So far this financial year, we have cleansed 85,201 of our gullies. In addition to that, we have 2 in-house gully emptying teams. These teams are focused specifically on flooding issues on the highway network and dealing with more complex drainage jobs. So far this financial year, we have completed 482 jobs in-house. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do you want to come back on that, or are you happy with that response? Matt?
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back on that, could it be confirmed that the remainder will be cleared by the end of the financial year?
Yeah, I can confirm that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. The second question is from Councillor David Vassmer. I invite him to read his question.
Thank you, Chair. Judging by reports from local residents, there appears to be an upsurge in irresponsible dog owners not picking up dog poo or leaving bags of poo hanging on trees and skips or just lying on the ground by paths. At the same time, it appears that the amount of staff time that allocated dog warden services by Shropshire Council has been cut. Could officers report on 1, the funding of the dog warden service over the last 4 years, 2, the staff allocated, either part-time or full-time, to dog warden duties, and 3, list the enforcement action taken over the last 4 years? Thank you.
Thank you. I invite Councillor Steve Davenport, portfolio holder for Highways, to respond.
Okay. We do have a specific budget for dog warden services. We have a budget for any Shropshire Council employees, in addition to support, is brought in, funded from 3.296, 250,000 2021 figure for the procurement of street cleansing services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If we can move on to item 6 now.
Could I
You want to come back, do you? Okay. Very quickly.
Sorry, I've just noticed there's two other parts to this. It says one of the questions are the staff allocated part-time, either or full-time dog warden duties. The response is one part-time dog warden additionally will employ services of a controlled kennels to deal with collection of stray dogs reported to the council. And part 3 is list the enforcement action taken over the last 4 years. Response: we regret that due to technical issues we have been unable to extract that information in time for this meeting. We are working to resolve this. We aim to provide the information as follows as soon as we possibly can, and I will make sure that goes out. Okay,
thank you. Are you happy with that response, David?
Oh, thanks, Joe. Just quickly,
Yes.
My impression is that the dog warden service has been reduced over the last 2 or 3 years, and there's less staff time allocated to it. I couldn't quite digest from the answer, Steve, whether that is true or not. Is that true?
It has been reduced, but we will be doing it differently in the next financial year. So we will be up. We will be stepping it up on demand.
Yeah, Steve, perhaps you could just reinforce what you're saying now and clarify it by email after the meeting. Thank you very much. We're now going to move on to item 6, which is the Highway Improvement Plan. Can Andy Wild introduce himself and present this item, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Andy Wild. I'm the head of highways, and I'd just like to sort of lead you through the report that's been submitted to the committee. The report effectively just gives a summary of the improvement plan that was instigated in early 2009. So Tom Blackburn-Mays was appointed by Shropshire Council to come in and lead on an improvement plan and support the service in that improvement plan. So that was a very detailed document. The improvement plan has now sort of merged into a wider improvement plan, because that initial document focused very sort of specifically on the Shropshire Council side. That has now been developed into a wider sort of highways improvement plan, which now incorporates Kpi and wider areas of the service. So just to sort of summarise, there's now a new management team in place. That management team on the Shropshire side consists of Steve Smith, who was appointed as Assistant Director in July 2020. I was made interim head of service at the same time, and then was formally appointed in December. Kpi brought in a new management team last year, which consisted of a new general manager and a new operations manager. And in sort of collaboration, really, we have developed the improvement plan to now cover all areas of their contract as well as our own. So that plan is now in development and is now starting to sort of become embedded as business as usual as the service develops. And again, this is sort of highlighted in fairly good detail in the report that I won't dive into the specifics. So in terms of that in plan, we are currently managing our highways asset, which is, as everyone knows, a deteriorating sort of asset, and we are constantly trying to find ways in which we can get better value and deliver maintenance more effectively. We've got a far greater sort of emphasis on preventative maintenance strategies than we used to. We're trying to prioritise reactive and effective maintenance at the forefront of our thinking and try and deliver best value on the network. It's noted in the report that in terms of potholes and defects, this year we've experienced a considerable increase in the number of defects that we are trying to manage. Again, this is not an issue that's specific to Shropshire. It's a national challenge, and highways authorities up and down the country are struggling with this area, and again trying to deal with, you know, deterioration on the network and trying to slow that and deal with more reactive maintenance, which from an operational perspective is harder to manage. Now, in terms of value and improvements, there's been a number of notable ones which again are highlighted within the report. This time last year we were doing sort of 25% of our reactive maintenance pothole repairs were what we call permanent. Now we are doing 75% permanent. Again, the improvement plan picks up the quality, and again that's something that we've highlighted in detail with Kpi about an area of specific improvement. Again, it's weaved into the key performance indicators that now sit above the contract, which are being measured, and we are working with Kpi to develop that area of the service and look to deliver improvements in that area. We delivered 45% more reactive maintenance repairs in the last year than we did the year before. That's a backdrop of a reduction of £1.45 million in the cost of that work. So we've found ways of delivering more effective reactive maintenance at reduced cost. We've done, at this time last year, we were doing 2,000 gully emptying activities a month. We now do that per week. We've developed an in-house resource pool, which started in sort of March, April last year as a trial, and that's been developed into what we're referring to our own in-house team. So we're now working with much more of a mixed economy than we ever used to. Areas of work that were always traditionally done by Kpi as part of the term maintenance contract are now being delivered by us. We've got what we call our find and fix teams out on the network. Those are undertaking reactive permanent defect repairs on our back lanes, but they don't just do that type of work. They do something that's much more in line with sort of Lensman activities. They clean signs, they clear off gullies, they dig grips into ditches, and they do permanent defect repairs. And so far this year, we've done over 7,800 interventions using these teams. Again, that's what we're describing as our hybrid model. So I think this is something that a lot of authorities up and down the country have recognised, again, that one size doesn't fit all. We're looking at areas where Kpi are strong and deliver good work on our behalf. But there's also areas where we think our approach and our sort of model is more effective. So that's still in what we're calling really a test environment. So, you know, the fit hasn't been established. We're still learning, we're still developing it. But I think there's areas where it's performing very, very strongly, and we're now seeing the benefits of that. And again, just sort of hooking back to the improvements on the Kpi contract, again, having, you know, robust and detailed conversations about what that service offer needs to look like. And again, I think Kpi, in terms of the new management team that's now in place, recognise where they haven't got the service correct. And I think the fact that they've changed that management approach and brought in a new team does sort of give acknowledgement to the fact that they know that they've got to make improvements, and we certainly recognise that as well. So in terms of the summary, that was really where I wanted to get to. I just wanted to sort of lift some of the highlights out of that improvement plan, and then, you know, give a bit of a summary, and then obviously take any questions that the panel has.
Thank you very much. I note that Steve Charmley, the deputy leader, has indicated that he wishes to make a statement on this item. So if I take that next, please. Steve, do you want to go ahead?
Thank you, Chair. So sorry to drop into your meeting, but it's obviously a hot topic. There's no doubt that this is a very important topic for the whole of the county, and I think we can all accept that the roads and footways in our county are not where we want them to be at this current time. For that, we as an administration, we've got to hold our hands up and say, we take responsibility for it. It's happened on our watch. I'm not going to offer any excuses for the reasons of we are where we are, but there are a few reasons which need to be taken into account. Firstly, the funds which we took out of the highways budget and put into adult social care. and Children's Services. I make no apology for that. It was the right thing to do at the time. Secondly, the weather, the beast from the east, 2 massive flooding events and rain of biblical proportions. We've had to deal with an awful lot in a very short time. I think finally the government funding which we receive is clearly not enough, and measures are in place to write to the Prime Minister and ask him to come to the county and address that. But we can't wait around for these things to solve themselves. So I want to put forward a solution, and your meeting is a very timely place to do it. The report before you sets out the scale of the challenge, and we are going to meet it. So I'm pleased to confirm today that Conservatives in Shropshire are committing to spend an extra £40 million over the next 4 years to fix our roads and footways. That is, to be very clear, an additional £10 million each year for each of the next 4 years of the next administration. This will be a step change in our approach that will allow us to stop chasing the problem and invest in the manpower and technology to carry out high quality repairs that we all want to see. I don't intend to take up any more of your meeting, Chairman, but I thought it was very important and timely that we make this announcement, because obviously it's going to affect the way your meeting goes forward. So thank you for your time, Chair, and I will let you get on with your meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Steve. I'll now ask members of the committee.
Chair. Sorry, Andy Boddington. Could I raise a point of order? This is a scrutiny meeting, an overview meeting, not a meeting in which all of us from different political parties put forward our manifesto. I don't think that contribution was appropriate.
That's noted, Andy. Thank you very much. Okay, I will now ask members of the committee for their comments. If you can indicate on the chat function if you wish to speak, and please remember that when asked to speak, members should unmute microphones, state their name and remute on completion. Dan Morris.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your report, Andy. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank Andy on a few occasions that I've had to ask to ring to speak to Andy. He's always been very active, and I think his appointment and that of Steve Smith has been a good thing for the county over the past year. That said, I look at the KPI reports on the report, and there's a sea of green in there. And when you speak to our parish councils, I think they would raise one or two figurative eyebrows about the sea of green. In terms of hitting the KPI scores. So I just wondered whether I'm going to pick on one, which is KPI 1A, which says reactive and routine highway maintenance tasks completed in time, 72%. I'll pick on one parish council because that's where I'm going tonight. And I'll know that at least half of what they've reported on their customer service, My Shropshire, hasn't been resolved or reported on. And I think one or two parish councils might be a little bit surprised to see such a sea of green. So I wonder what does completed in time actually mean, Andy? Would you mind coming back on that? And then I wondered if you could possibly comment also about the interface between the customer service angle and how people report, and then how that is followed up in the sort of reactive maintenance side of things. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do you want to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dan. So in terms of the KPI figures, I think it's a very valid point, and I think the point you've just raised there about that figure, is that figure a balance and reflective of what's happening on the network? And I think the answer is no. And the reason the answer is no is because in that KPI at this time of year, so we started running these figures in December, and that suite of KPI was implemented. So we've now got figures for January and February. Now, what those do within that reactive maintenance KPI, there's something called Kpi Relief. So when the reactive maintenance operations are disrupted, i.e. severe flooding, winter maintenance, then what we do is issue a KPI relief, which then adjusts that figure, because it is unreasonable to expect the contractor to still hit the performance levels that they are expected to hit if they are dealing with gritting every night and they're dealing with emergency floods. So that KPI figure is reflective of that disruption that has gone on for the last 2 months. Now, going forward, part of the Highways Improvement Plan is going to look at ways in which we can start to split out that resource and give us more ability to sort of bend and flex at this time of year, because we're currently trying to manage the service with quite a rigid resource pool. And again, as you might expect, you know, this time of year is when pothole numbers increase considerably. I think in between January and February, we saw an extra sort of 3,000. The numbers go up considerably just at the point where we're trying to deal with winter maintenance activities and deal with emergencies, floods, and all the rest of the stuff that comes during the winter period. So as a service, we recognise that trying to do all of those things with a very rigid and fixed resource pool is something that we need to improve on and find a different way. So that is the reason why that figure probably doesn't reflect what you think is happening on the ground, and I wouldn't disagree with you.
Could you also just reply on the customer service side of things as well, please, Andy, and how you deal with that, whether that's part of your sort of management sort of area, and why do we still have such a backlog of complaints that are raised on My Shropshire, again, that sort of feeds into why I'm seeing a sea of green there, which doesn't reflect what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to come back on that one as well. There's sort of two aspects to this. One is the sheer volume of inquiries that we're currently receiving. Again, at this time of year, winter maintenance has a factor in that, but across the board for the last 12 months, we've seen demand go up and up and up. And again, I think in the report, it does highlight that trend. And the result, again, it's something that we've got to look at in terms of how we're set up and how we're structured to try and meet that demand, which is unprecedented at times. And we simply haven't had the ability to get on top of all of the demand and all of the number of inquiries that are out there. So we are trying to find better ways at matching that resource level to the demand. That's one factor in it. The other factor is the interface between our confirmed management system and the sort of My Shropshire CSC, which we've got a working group established, which Victoria Doran leads on for me on our side. And again, that's interfacing with colleagues in business development to try and understand how that system can work better. So it is an area of focus for us, and I recognise that there are issues in that system and frustrations.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you very much. I have to say, Andy, as you'll be aware, a number of members, well, most members, are not happy with the way My Shropshire is working and feel it's failing because of the immense gaps in between reporting, receiving something back and then hearing when something's been done. So I think at some point in the future, when the changes are made, that actually there is a lot of member involvement to make sure that this works properly. If I can just make a comment, I'm seeing some things in the chat function. This is an overview scrutiny committee, so it isn't really the time to raise local issues. I mean, the general problems can be raised here, but it's not about individual areas. We could be here all day otherwise. Thank you very much. We're now going to go to Pam Mosley.
Thank you, Chair. It was a question I didn't get in quite quick enough of Steve Chalmley's speech, and I do agree with Councillor Boddington about the appropriateness of bringing that sort of speech to a scrutiny committee, but that's not the point I'm making. He specifically mentioned £40 million over 4 years for roads and footways, and there's no mention there of cycleways. Now, I asked a question back in September at full council about the dreadful state of, I can only speak for Shrewsbury and the area around, of the cycle paths that we had in a terrible state, unmaintained, overgrown, and I myself suffered an injury last month purely down to lack of maintenance on one of our cycle paths. We're looking at more active travel, you know, big town planners going through, lots of talk about pedestrians and cyclists coming to the fore, but his comment specifically didn't mention cycleways. Can I ask whether there is going to be any more money planned for cycleways in Shropshire and specifically Shrewsbury? Thank you.
Andy, sorry, don't interrupt, please, Steve.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much. You need to indicate in the chat if you wish to speak. Otherwise, I will revert to Andy. But if you want to say something on it, if you just put in the chat function, please. Thank you very much. Andy, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, happily. So again, I think it sort of comes back to that improvement plan and that re-look at trying to sort of reprioritise some of our maintenance activities. Again, you know, maintenance has been an area that has suffered, and I think what we are trying to do is look at how we can get sort of a better improvement plan and a better level of service out of that reactive maintenance story. And I think looking at the service across the piece, that's something that we will try and focus on. I think it is fair comment in terms of the active travel agenda, and there are far more people cycling than there ever have been. But it's one of the areas of focus in the improvement plan.
Okay, Steve Brown, I see you've put you're happy to pick this up, so you want to talk on the cycling aspect, do you?
I do. Thank you, Chair. It was just to pick up some of the points that have been mentioned. As a committee will know, we are moving sort of forward with active travel, and one of the key documents that we've got that we're working on at the minute is the local transport plan 4, which we're already in work about and have gone to Cabinet and received approval for that. We're looking forward as well and announced at the Big Town Plan Festival that we would be looking to advance on our local cycling and walking implementation plan. And we have got a number of interviews that are progressing this Friday in order to see if we can take that forward and make an appointment to coordinate with that. And as regards the funding, there is an element of that with under the new sort of gear change policy for the government, that any sort of highways funding now has to include an element of allowing and assessing for active travel and sort of cycleways as well. So that would be wrapped up and included within that government policy. That said, we have to take on board that a lot of our towns and villages have got sort of medieval streetscape, so the widths aren't always applicable and would cause some difficulties, but where we have to be cognizant of that policy now. So we're working on that, we're pulling all of that together, making appointments for that work to go forward, and also through Highway SIL as well. We've identified a number of cycle paths that we will be bringing forward, but the point that Councillor Mosley made is right, and we do need to improve the maintenance on the existing cycle path. So we all accept that, and we will improve that over the next sort of few weeks as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Stephen. Simon Harris has indicated he wishes to scrutinise. So would you like to come in now, Simon?
Thank you. Okay, on the note of Andy said we have over 92,000 gullies, to which 85,000 will be cleaned up already, and those few we've had in my town gullies that have been jammed up for months now, even years, and I've been trying to get the gully cleaner to the top end of the town, to no avail. I would like Andy Wild to comment on that. I've never seen any of these reactive maintenance teams. You've had 6, as far as I'm aware, and I want to know what they look like, because that to me is not quite right. And on the last thing is, can any of the officers tell me what is the percentage between the north, the central, and the south now of the reactive maintenance teams? Because up until about 18 months ago, most of the work was being done in the north of the county rather than the south of the county, where most of the smaller roads and the lanes are based.
Thank you. Andy Wild, can you respond to that now, or will you need to respond to that later?
I can certainly come back on some of that, Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yeah, in terms of gully crews, you know, we operate a management system called Carbon Tech. So all of our activity and all of the work that we undertake is captured within Carbon Tech. So we have a full inventory of all of the gullies that we've cleansed, all of the work that's been undertaken. So, you know, I think it's fair to say trying to sort of locate 6 gully wagons on a network that's 5,200 kilometres long is not always easy, and they're not, you know, they're not visible. You know, then they could easily be sort of mistaken for utility companies. We don't sort of flash them with Shropshire Council information. So to be fair, you know, all of that information is auditable, all of it's traceable in terms of the demand and the number of gullies that we've emptied and the amount of work that we've done. We've done a significant amount of work in developing that service over the last 12 months. Drainage has been a significant area of focus for us. We've reinstated the gully and the ditching programme that's started again in South Shropshire. We've had Lensman out doing all sorts of reactive undertakings on drainage, and drainage has been a significant focus because there was a direct correlation between ineffective drainage and potholes. So in terms of trying to ensure that the network is as robust as it possibly can be, drainage is a huge focus for us, and we've done a significant amount of work in the last 12 months. In terms of outstanding work in Broseley, I will happily look into that and see what we have recorded and what is left outstanding, and I'll happily report back to Councillor Harris on that.
Thank you very much. Paul Wynne.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I want to bring up a couple of points. In 12 years of being a Shropshire councillor, I've not brought anything up personally in my patch, which I'm not going to now because I'm respecting what the chairman said. But in saying that, for Andy, just to put him in the picture, the A41, one of the main trunk routes, runs through my patch. I think he'll know what I'm talking about. I shall catch up with you sometime and have a chat about it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for respecting that. Nick Bardsley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I pick up on what Councillor Dan Morris said? It does seem to me that to have in my Shropshire a service which, for all sorts of reasons, simply isn't working at all at the moment is not only misleading to the public, but must be hugely frustrating for the officers. Can I suggest that it is simply suspended for the time being until such time as people can get a reasonable response within a reasonable timescale? But to leave it there ineffective seems to me to be very damaging to Shropshire Council's reputation. It would be much better to say, for all sorts of good reasons, the service is suspended. We can't actually respond in the way that we would like to.
Okay. Do you want to respond to that, Andy?
Just, I mean, in terms of highways as a service area, we know that we've got a backlog of customer inquiries. What I'm not clear on at the moment, and which we're trying to work through as part of this working group, is how much of that is a systems issue and how much of that is just officers struggling to get turnaround responses. You know, based on the volume of inquiries we're having in, and I think that working group is sort of making progress on that. I think the part I can't comment on is how much of that is a systems issue. We're just looking at the part of it on our side in terms of highways and trying to understand, is our system interfacing appropriately.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the last person who wants to ask questions is Roy Oldcroft. Roy, do you want to come in?
Yes, thanks. Yeah, I'm just wondering, how many staff do we actually have from highways who, what you might call, wander around the roads looking for potholes or whatever? That's question one, which is fairly straightforward, I think. Do we have a system where our vehicles and the drivers of those vehicles are encouraged to report potholes back to base? And thirdly, can we, if we are to continue with the pothole reporting system, could we ensure that the reports that come back to members of the public include the location, not the number of the report, but the location? Because a lot of people will report 2 or 3 different potholes or difficulties that they've had, and then what they get is you know, the report back that complaint number 21 has been dealt with. Well, which one was it? You know, so we're maybe being a bit more helpful if we say, yeah, that was in Clark Road or wherever. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roy. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Can I just ask, Joyce, could I have an answer to the first two parts of that?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to answer those, Chair. So in response to Councillor Allcroft's question, in terms of inspecting the network, we have a dedicated team of highway inspectors. That team carry out all of our highways inspections in accordance with our policy. So we have a road hierarchy. Some of our more A and B roads will be inspected monthly, whereas U roads, for example, are inspected annually or biannually. So they follow that frequency of inspection. In addition to that, and again, they are picking up highway safety defects and recording those and placing orders for those to be rectified. In addition to that, we work across the highway service out of 3 specific areas, north, central, south, and those areas are divided up into 16 zones. And we have a technician who is responsible for each of those areas. So again, they have a more broader responsibility for issues in their network. So again, potholes and defects and other things that they spot, they will go onto the system and see if that's been picked up by an inspector. If it has, obviously they don't need to respond, but beyond that, if they see stuff or things get reported to them by members of the public, they will then investigate and follow that up with the appropriate action.
Okay, thank you very much. We've now come to the end of that item, and the committee is asked to note the content of this report, which we have done, and identify areas of concern not already considered within the improvement plan for consideration into future improvement activity. Is there anything there that members want to come back to? Is there anything in the future improvement activity they would like to see?
Joyce, can I speak?
Of course you can. Yes, Dan Morris.
So given that we've 2 or 3 members have raised points about the customer service, and Councillor Bardsley has mentioned the point about, you know, even suspending the My Shropshire account, you know, maybe that is something that we should be looking into.
Absolutely, there are issues there. We all know that. So would everybody be happy if we could actually put it on the work programme, if you like, or we could come back to it at the next meeting, perhaps? We have got things on the. Oh, Mark Barrow. What did you want to say? Something, Mark?
It was just to clarify, Chair. The My Shropshire portal, of course, is a wider corporate piece. So whether you want to deal with it here or maybe refer it to performance management, either maybe could deal with it. And it was just to stress, in a highways context, as of the end of March, Kia will be adopting our Confirm system, so you'll get full visibility on highways issues within that part of the system. But I do accept that My Shropshire, of course, is used for wider things. So just to bring that to it, Chair.
Right, well, I would suggest then that we actually leave it for now, see how the system works after March when this new system comes in, and if it still needs looking at, then whoever the councillors at the time may wish to go back to it. Is everybody happy with that? If not, speak now. Okay, that's fine. We'll leave that there then. Before moving on to the next item, Julian Dean is in the meeting, and I haven't asked, do you have any interest to declare, please?
Thanks, Joyce. No interest to declare, thanks.
Okay, in that case, we'll move on from that item. Thank you very much. We're now going to move on to item 7, highways winter maintenance. Thank you. Can Andy Wild again introduce himself and present this item again?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Andy Wild, Head of Highways. So again, I'll follow the same format. I will literally just sort of do a bit of a walkthrough of the winter maintenance report. So in terms of just sort of, I'll start with a summary of the winter that we've just experienced. So again, this is sort of fairly comparable when you think back to the previous winter. It was fairly mild. We had Storm Kieran, Storm Dennis, but again, that just generally brought with it sort of wetter and obviously sort of strong winds, but it wasn't what I'd describe as a proper winter. I think that's sort of just what we've experienced recently. We've gone through a winter that you would describe as quite significant. It was the coldest January for 10 years. Highlighted in the report, that table of information does give you that broad comparison between the winter of 1920 and the winter of 2021. And again, if in there it does detail that 6 weeks that was quite an intense period between sort of the middle of December right through to the end of January. In that month of January, we undertook 24 days of active sort of treatment of the network, gritting activities, sometimes twice during the day. And the amount of salt that we actually put down was sort of significant compared to that period the following year. I think in that January period, we laid over 7,304 tonnes of salt, which gives you a bit of an idea of just how much activity we had to undertake on the network to ensure that it was safe and free from issues. So that's been quite a significant challenge for us. Again, the report does highlight the amount of customer service inquiries that we've had in related specifically to winter maintenance activities, grip bin replenishment, treating of footways, treating of carriageways. Again, there's been a lot in that sort of winter period for us to deal with. However, in the report, what it does also highlight is the areas of the service that we have concerns about. I think these are common concerns, and I think actually are sort of areas that we know the service doesn't reach out in the way that it needs to, are recognised and sort of mirrored back to us, I think, by the inquiries that we're getting back and the feedback. I think it's important to note here that in terms of delivering the service, the service actually, in terms of functioning, works very well, because we just haven't had a huge amount of insurance claims and issues relating to winter service. So I think in terms of its fundamental aspects of it, it delivers, and it doesn't raise what I describe as safety concerns for us. I think what it does do is sort of highlights where the service doesn't fit and where it comes up short. And I think in the sort of context of what I describe as a proper winter, I think some of the shortcomings of it have become obvious. And they've been laid bare in terms of the way when it's been tested in certain areas. It certainly doesn't address all areas that it needs to. I think it's probably viewed as quite an unfriendly service, if I could describe it as that, because I think it's clear on what the policy is. It's clear on what the defined network is. It's clear on the service. But what I don't think it does is look at it from a customer perspective. I think there are areas where we recognise, certainly in terms of the way that we're resourced out of hours, that on a day-to-day basis it works, but when the weather starts to ramp up, the ability for the duty officers to deal with the weather forecasting, make the decision on how we're going to treat, engage with snowplow contractors about when they need to go out and treat on our behalf, when they don't, and obviously dealing with inquiries from members of the public. It's a huge amount of work to deal with for the resource that we have, certainly out of hours. So I think what we're talking about here is effectively a reprofiling of the service, and looking at a service that we think would suit the needs of the public and our stakeholders better. I think there's areas where we need to let go and empower frontline sort of staff. That's on the Shropshire Council side and the Kia side to make better local decisions on our behalf. I think there's too much needs to come back into the service for decisions. There's inconsistencies in how it operates. I think the topography and the geography of Shropshire isn't necessarily well suited by the existing arrangements, and certainly some of the challenges around the network in the south. We need to find a better way of dealing with that. And I think the report again highlights the areas that we've identified for the winter review and the areas that we think we need to focus on. But and again, what we've done is benchmark. You know, it's not just been sort of shaped by feedback and information coming back from the community and members and other stakeholders. We're looking at what's going on nationally and benchmarking our service across the board at other authorities. And I think again in the report, I think that is highlighted. I think it shows that we're at the low end of the winter maintenance spectrum in terms of the amount of network that we treat. We're at the low end in terms of how that service operates. But again, and I think just picking up on some of the other stuff, I think what the service has done in the past is following a winter maintenance period, it's gone back and had a look at the operational plan. But I don't think that has ever addressed some of the deep-rooted frustrations that the community have about how the service is. And again, this is what the approach is now going to take. It's a deep dive and a root and branch review at looking at how we want this to operate. You know, we have a massive resource pool of private snowplough contractors in Shropshire, and we're very lucky to have them. They do a terrific job for us, but again, there's inconsistencies in how they're geared up, the kit that they carry, what the activities that they can undertake on our behalf. But also, you know, the engagement strategy around how they operate. You know, they're not empowered to act on our behalf in the way that I think we can get better value out of their knowledge, their local network. So all of that is captured in there, and I think we've also seen, you know, certainly if you look at the demand on grit bin replenishment, you know, our strategy to that, it's I think there's smarter ways that we can do that. We can look at sort of getting a full restock done before the winter even impacts, and then planning a restock halfway through. There's smart technology out there which allows sort of smartphones to feed back into the highways machine very quickly about when they're running low, and we can start to think more carefully and strategically about how we undertake these activities so they don't impact in the way that they do and resources are stretched. So I think all of that is recognised in that document, and I think what it's basically saying is that we recognise that the service hasn't got the offer correct. I think we've listened to the feedback, and the service hasn't been looked at in real detail for an extended period of time. So I think there is recognition that needs to happen. So that's my initial summary really, and I'm happy to take any questions in relation to the report.
Thank you, Andy. I think we all agree that the whole service needs an overhaul because it certainly isn't intelligence-led. And I think everything you've said now that what we're going to be doing holds out hope for members and for members of the public as well. If I can go to Dan, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Andy, once again. What you were saying about utilising you know, the private contractors and the people who have on the ground is music to my ears. I know you and I have had conversations in the past about how it was 15, 20 years ago, and, you know, maybe beyond, when people on the ground were trusted to make decisions about what pertains to their particular area. I was on to one of our contractors this morning and in anticipation of this meeting, and see, Shrewsbury is only 250 feet above sea level, but some of the areas in one or two of my areas are 1,000 feet above sea level, and it's a completely different area there. It's completely different. It's almost like a different country sometimes, and I guess there was, you know, has been some frustration in not being able to make on the ground decisions. Also, sort of inabilities to sort of get hold of key people to make those sort of decisions, and I know you're addressing those, so this isn't necessarily something to come back on, but it just really emphasises the importance of us, because importance of just devolving a little bit of decision making and having people have a little bit more responsibility for their areas in places that aren't part of the 27% of the roads that Shropshire Council treats. It is really important to do that. So, but you know, I recognise that you know this, and you're putting a plan in place, but it can't come soon enough. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Dan. Nick Bardsley.
Thank you, Chair. Really just echoing what Dan Morris has said. I'm delighted to hear what Andy has just been saying. it does seem to me extraordinary that many of our private snowplough contractors know their patch extremely well. They know which culverts are likely to get blocked after heavy rain. They can probably get there in 5 or 10 minutes and get it cleared, and that in itself can save an enormous amount of local flooding. A lot of culverts do go underneath highways, and if they're blocked, then of course the chances are that there will be, you know, quite a significant local flood. If a local contractor can get out there, get it cleared, even during the downpour, and certainly, you know, within 20 minutes, half an hour afterwards, that's going to save everybody, you know, an enormous amount of time and trouble. So very big welcome to what Andy said, and very much echoing what Dan Morris has said as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nick. Julian Dean.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a couple of things. The first is just about pavements. So just to check, really to get some feedback on where we were this year with that. But more generally, going back, I think it's now 3 years or something like that, when we had a lot of snow in the centre of Shrewsbury, we set up some joint working with the town council, and I have asked in subsequent years, you know, have we got sort of a protocol for doing that on a regular basis? And I've sort of been assured that there is something, but I've never actually seen anything. So I'm just wondering how far we've got with that in terms of working with the town councils to make sure that pavements, especially in the town centres across the county, but you know, some of the other networks are being looked after. The next one is just to check where we are with the snow warden story, because that came up at the same time, and it's part of hopefully a development. And the final one is just that business about local procurement of contractors to look after things. I mean, from my own point of view, that's music to my ears as well, because it plays into a whole community wealth building story, and it'd be great if Highways was leading on some of that work. And I don't think it just applies to the rural network. I don't see why, you know, a rurally placed contractors couldn't be coming in and helping to look after some of the areas in the towns as well. But I'd just be interested to see, you know, to hear a little bit about whether there's further plans to develop that sort of local procurement story. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to answer that. So I mean, to answer your question, at the moment, the arrangements with the town council are fairly fluid and not formalised in so much that, you know, in the period of severe weather, and it happens with sort of flooding in Shrewsbury, and not just winter maintenance, but you know that there are good communication links, and when we are struggling for resources, we do turn to the town council, and they've been very good at offering resource to us in the past, which I thank them for. And what I would like to move towards is a more formalisation of these arrangements. So you know, Councillor Dean did highlight the fact that the commitment had been made, and that's highlighted in the report, to embrace the snow wardens and how that could work, because you know, I think there's again, linking back to that benchmarking exercise, there's examples of good practice up and down the country of where councils have worked well with local communities and empowered local communities and interested parties to be given, you know, snow clearing gear for dealing with footpaths, handheld gritter units that allow them to grit footpaths. I mean, if they're working in the carriageway, I think that brings into all sorts of health and safety and insurance and other issues. But I think when you actually tailor it, the sort of thing that the community are keen on is, you know, people who go out and look at the grit bins, are they full? Do they need replenishing? Can we clear footpaths to community centres, to shops? There's vulnerable people in the community that only these individuals know about. You know, all of that can be done at a local level, you know, without Big Brother having to know, you know, a huge amount or having to influence it a huge amount. At the moment, I think we're holding on to too much, but I think we can find a way. I think there's an appetite to find a better way to empower local communities to serve, because they know it better than we do, you know. So that's absolutely at the forefront of our thinking.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Andy Boddington now.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome both Julian's and Andy Wild's comments, because they address the points I wanted to address. I think it was back in late 2014 or early 2015, we agreed to set up an experimental snow warden scheme, and we didn't, and it's been delayed. And we thought this winter it would have been useful. If we can get on with that, work out the parameters and make it work, that'd be good. Also, the point about working with town councils, I think we should formalise that. I'm sorry to say that my town council, Ludlow Town Council, does not turn out its staff to help Shropshire Highways at any point, which is a bit embarrassing, frankly. If we had a protocol that town councils could adopt across the county and encourage them to adopt it so that we have all hands to the pump, or rather all hands to the snow and ice when a snow event occurs, I think that would be really good for the county as a whole and will help us use our resources as a council a lot better.
Thank you. You don't need a response from Andy on that, do you? It's just a comment you're making.
It's just a comment, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. If I can just reiterate, we haven't got any other speakers yet, but if I can just reiterate, I think there is a frustration with contractors, you know, the local farmers who go out gritting. I know in my own area that the local farmer very often will ring the local depot saying there's going to be a frost tonight, because who better to know what the weather forecast is going to be than a farmer, and they refuse to let him go and pick up grit. So I hope that we will actually listen to the contractors. They know what they're doing. And before, when I mentioned about intelligence-led, I think we need to highlight when we're going through the process of where grit should be, businesses that will actually not be able to function if their roads aren't gritted. I think member involvement in whatever we're going to do next is extremely important. And I notice on the paper, the decisions the committee is asked to do is endorse a review of the current winter maintenance plan, which I'm sure we all do. The next point is identify areas of strategic concern for consideration within the review. I think we've all done that. And identify a mechanism to engage with members further in the development of the plan. So what I would ask is, how are you going to engage with members in the development of this plan, please? Thank you.
I mean, I'm quite happy to sort of to take committee's lead on this. Would a task and finish group or a group specifically tasked with helping to support the development of it be welcome? I mean, obviously, in terms of the intelligence that we've gained so far, I mean, I think the report highlights that. I think we've captured a fair bit of that, but you know, in terms of formalising, how that goes forward, I'm quite happy to sort of take a lead on that, and but take views on how members would like to engage with it.
I'm happy to hear from members. Oh, Steve Davenport.
Yeah, hi Chair. I'd like to think that scrutiny would actually take forward the new winter maintenance programme and feed into that. So I would recommend or ask if a task and finish group alongside Andy's new winter maintenance when it's actually on the cards. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would members support that? I don't know whether a task and finish group or a working group would be the better option. I'll take advice on that. Anybody got any thoughts?
Yes,
No?
Chair, if I can, I think a task and finish should be most suitable for this. Set target dates, come up with recommendations, and obviously, hopefully, to be implemented by next winter.
The sooner the better, I think. Thank you, Roy. Paul Wynne, you wanted to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think the straightforward thing to do is to deal with the parish councils. Most of the parish councils in the rural areas, that's where the problem is with all this. Use the parish councils because they know all the farmers, they have the contacts, they know where to go and what to do. I would have thought the parish council would be the best way to go forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, in that case, what I would suggest is we actually put together a task and finish group. If you're there, Daniel, if you can make a note, a task and finish group and input into regulations on the highway winter maintenance reorganisation, really. Is everybody happy with that? Because if you are, I don't know if I need to take a vote. Is everyone happy with that?
Yes, I'm happy.
If I don't hear anything, I'll assume that everybody's happy with that and we'll take that forward. I don't know if we need that to be a recommendation or we can just say we are going to have a task and finish group. I think perhaps we ought to take a vote on it. Is everybody happy if I take a vote? Yeah?
Royce, you've got Mark Barrow wants to speak.
Oh, right. Thank you, Mark. Sorry.
Sorry, Chair, I was just going to add as a suggestion, conscious of where we are in the election cycle and where the focus of members will be, how about at least make sure we have one meeting before the election that sets the framework, the terms of reference. If we can get 2 meetings in, great. If we can't, at least then you've got a framed piece of work that goes forward into the next council. Just to add that as a suggestion.
That's an excellent idea. We'll go forward with that, I think. Mark, is everybody happy with that? I'll just go down the names just to make sure everybody is happy with that. Andy Boddington?
Yes.
Julian Dean?
Yes.
Nick Bardsley?
Yes.
Roy Allcroft? Roy?
Yes, having trouble with my mic. Yes, thank you.
Dan Morris?
Yes.
Pam Mosley?
Yes.
Paul Wynne?
Yes.
There you are, that's unanimous, and we'll take that forward from this meeting. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 9, Place Overview Committee Work Programme. Daniel, if you'd like to pick this up.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Daniel Webb here, Review Scrutiny Officer.
You're a bit quiet, Daniel.
Very sorry to do that, I'm afraid.
Sorry, Joyce. Can I just interrupt? You've missed out item 8.
Oh.
So you have.
I turned over one page too many. Oh, I do apologise. I have. Sorry. There you are. I'm moving on with the meeting too quickly. Item 8, analysis of people killed or seriously injured in road traffic collisions 2016 to 2020. Steve Taylor is going to lead on that. Thank you. Steve?
Yes, sorry. I thought Steve Brown was leading on it.
It's on the on here. It says that you're leading on it, but whoever.
Okay. Well, Steve asked me to produce a report, which is attached to the documentation. It's a review of all the accident data from January 2016 to September 2020.
Excuse me, Steve. Sorry, Steve Brown is actually introducing the report, so I'll save you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
On the cuff.
Yes, I'm having a good day today. Steve, would you like to take over, introduce the report?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. The report in front of the committee today is essentially a report of 2 parts. So it's an analysis of the killed and seriously injured data from 2016 to 2020 and covers a period from January 2016 up to the 15th of December last year, because that was the data cut-off point, and then we'll pick up the remaining 2 weeks of last year in the further reports that come forward to this committee. Should be noted that the Shropshire Council, we have a statutory obligation and responsibility under the Road Traffic Act to capture this data and also to plan our sort of expenditure through the local transport programme of where we invest in order to mitigate and reduce killed and seriously injured accidents on the roads of Shropshire, and members should be aware of that. Really, it does need to be caveated also with that obviously last year included the lockdown periods, so road traffic and transport significantly reduced during that period, and members should also be aware of that and carry that warning. However, the general sort of themes coming through the report are that accidents are reducing and the number of killed and seriously injured issues are declining. The report also goes on to say that sort of older and existing policies, sort of the sites of community concern, which got suspended, have now sort of time has moved on, and we've got Highway Sill now, we've got 20's Plenty, we've got LTP also coming forward, and perhaps now is the time to do a sort of a review and look at those and consider, you know, the appropriateness of those policies, and also the issues that they're covering and the funding that goes into them as well. So that would really sort of do that sort of housekeeping approach, and also for people coming into the organisation, such as parish clerks, you know, which route do I go in if I've got concerns on the road network, you know, which funding stream am I looking at, and looking for this a task and finish group to look at that and decide which would be the best way forward and what sort of policy reviews need to be done. And also really for that sort of working group also to consider that with the data that we've got and the analysis of the accidents and the injuries coming through, are we spending our money in the right places and using our interventions properly, and should we be reviewing those? So we get lots of pressure to put 30 mile an hour and sort of traffic reduction measures outside of our villages, but essentially the data is saying 50 mile an hour roads and high speed roads. So there's perhaps is a checkpoint there for a working group to consider that, are we intervening and spending our money and planning our expenditure in the right areas? Are we doing that sort of demand management in order to look at where the accidents and the injuries are? One of the classic key things coming out the report was that 9% of accidents are now on bikes and cycling, and if we follow the government agenda and if we follow active travel, that will undoubtedly increase. So is now the right time to look at that, consider some of those issues, and decide whether we're investing our resources in the right area. The report itself is full of data, and there is an whole swathe of data there that members can see, but the recommendations are for members to consider and comment as appropriately. Should we have a working group to look at our investment decisions and whether those are marrying up with the data as we understand it, and should we be looking at that, and also to do a review of some of the policies and some of the new government funding that's come in, so we can match that better and position ourselves and also respond, you know, in an improved way to people making requests of the council. So the report is there, it's laid out with its attachment, and I'll be grateful for, I'll be happy to take any questions that come in.
Does anyone have any questions? Hello?
Joyce, yeah, can I ask a question, please?
Yes, please, Dan, go ahead.
I'm just interested in the cost of someone being killed or seriously seriously injured. It sounds quite callous, but when that sort of cost lands, does Shropshire Council, you know, are we sort of liable for that cost? And if you've got a saving by reducing KSIs, which you might get, for example, by reducing speed limits, is it possible to quantify that at all, Steve?
The answer to that, Councillor Morris, is it's perhaps embedded within various systems and processes of ours, and probably West Mercia Police as well. So our statutory responsibility is to analyse the data in what we call accident clusters, and to look at that, and we work with West Mercia Police on that. And within the report, it sort of captures some of the issues that cause that, whether that's road condition or poor driver behaviour or erratic driving behaviour or sunlight or any of these issues. So our responsibility is to sort of do a diagnostic of what caused that issue, and where required, to put the necessary engineering and interventions in to put that right. So that's what we do. The cost would be sort of captured in that in sort of insurance claims and anything else, and whether that fell on the council or was down to an accident or was down to another insured, another driver's responsibility. So unless we were at fault as a council because we hadn't done something that we were legally obliged to do, or we'd failed to deliver on one of our policies, the direct costs wouldn't necessarily come into us at that level. If that answers the question that you raised.
Okay. Dan, I noticed Daniel Webb says he can part answer that. Would you like to come in, Daniel? Before I bring Dan back.
Thank you, Chair. There is actually, the government actually have figures for the cost of slight, serious and fatal injuries in terms of calculating cost savings through reducing collisions. And this is purely off the top of my head. I can find the figures out further if you want. The going rate for in terms of calculating the cost of death is around £500,000. So in terms of reducing death through collisions, some measures do actually repay quite quickly in terms of those interventions. The challenge, of course, for a local authority is that while many of the costs fall on them, the benefit fall on, in terms of savings, fall on other agencies. So I think this is one really where the answer lies in partnership working rather than working solely within the context of the council.
Okay.
Okay. Steve Taylor wants to come in on this as well.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Daniel's just said, really, there are lots of reports that do that. You have to consider there's costs obviously to the councils, there's costs to the individuals in terms of loss of earnings, but then there's costs to other services, so health services, rehabilitation costs. If you need specialist housing, so it can end up with, especially seriously injured, you might need adapted housing through adult social care. So the costs can actually run into millions of pounds per person per accident. So it does vary, but there is published data about that.
Joyce, can I ask another question?
Of course you can, Dan, yes.
There's an awful lot of information in this report, and you could make it see whatever you want to see in some cases. I just think as a wider point, when you speak to people generally, either in the villages or the towns, people generally see traffic as, they're quite scared and they're concerned about it. And I just wonder, you can make economic points about reducing 20 mile an hour, going from 30 to 20 mile an hour limits, and people generally, I would imagine, you get more people wanting that than not wanting that. I just wonder where the sort of not the politics, but where the opinions of people that live in and around these areas, come into play. The people that we, that we represent and work for as a council, and perhaps sometimes the numbers don't show that by investing in smaller speed limits, for example, won't produce a return on investment. But it is sometimes what people who live in the area want us to do. And I just find that quite an interesting conflict all the time. Having done, nearly 4 years now in this job, there's always a reply that says, well, the numbers don't back it up. Well, people who live and work in, like I said, in villages and towns, generally they want to see more speed reduction in and around schools, for example. And we sometimes, as a council, I think, need to reflect more what people want. And, perhaps there doesn't need to be so much of a return on investment and see it that sort of cut and dry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I ask, do we actually target certain sectors of the population? Reading the report, we know that the elderly, if they're involved in an accident, are more likely to die because they're older. And we know that younger drivers at certain times of the day are more prone to having accidents. How do we target these people, and what can we do to get to them if we're not already getting to them?
I think the answer or the response to that, Councillor Barrow, and also incorporating Councillor Morris's response as well. So the report is looking at this issue from a number of aspects. So one is there is a statutory responsibility which is prescribed, which is to do with accidents and injuries and clusters, and we work backwards from that. So that is our statutory responsibility. So the systems and the processes are wrapped up within that. That data, albeit with the lockdown period of last year, is reducing, so it's improving, it's getting better. There seems to be less, and that data is coming through. And then across the piece, we're bringing forward the sort of 20s plenty outside of Shropshire schools. We've got the LTP programme, we've got highway sills going through. So part of that report is saying, looking at that mix and looking at our statutory responsibilities, how were we looking at that and bringing that forward and making sure that that forms a coherent and cohesive package. So statutory responsibilities to deal with accidents and injuries exists, but it is minimising. New agendas coming forward, and also other aspects of work that we've got. How we were bringing those forward. But we'll keep on doing the analysis of that, and keeping on doing the analysis of the accidents and the injuries and driving down that figure. But also there is the opportunity, as Councillor Morris says, that where we've got some of the other schemes and initiatives, those can bring forward and support more fully in the in the villages and the wider towns of Shropshire.
Thank you. Andy Boddington.
Thank you. To back up really what Dan Morris said, that here in Ludlow, our priority is not really to reduce accidents because we have very, very few accidents, but it's to keep the place calmer, to make it more comfortable, to make it feel better when you're walking down streets with narrow pavements, to be able to cycle with greater confidence. And that has to be an objective. It's not picked up in these KSI data. But I think that's the direction we have to go for active travel and to reduce reliance on car transport. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I go to Julian D now? Sorry, Julian, I missed you before.
That's fine. I mean, it was interesting to hear the figures in terms of the proportion of accidents that are affecting cyclists, and I'm not sure I'd really got that clear in what I was seeing. So just a comment on that would be helpful. Of course, we've now adopted LTN 120, the national note on how cycling on cycle infrastructure. So it'd be interesting to hear about how soon, how realistically can we start to implement that as the model for all our cycling infrastructure. Picking up on Andy Boddington's point, it's absolutely right. It's both about reducing accidents, but it's also about increasing the opportunity for people to use the streets in a safe way who otherwise are avoiding them. That's the truth of it, and that's why there is that sort of often popular sense that the 20s plenty things sort of make sense, and it does feel like we are slowly but surely working our way towards that as policy, and not just outside school for the very short part of children's journeys at one particular time of day. The final thing I just wanted to say is just to reflect back on the adoption of the motion we had at full council last week, which included in it the sort of a bit of a framework for LTP4 in terms of saying, moving away from the predict and provide model to the avoid, shift and improve model. I'd just be interested, and also in there we said that public health needs to be involved in developing LTP4, all of which plays into that business of the opportunity for people to use the streets in a much more accessible and safe way. So I realise that's a bit of a train of thought, but where that leads, I suppose, is that I realise there's risks with working parties and task and finish groups, but it sounds like we're looking at a working party. But I would really welcome a working party that brings together some of that stuff and really just does it in terms of, if you like, working together with officers to make sure that LTP4 reflects all of that, takes on a public health angle, make sure that cycle infrastructure is appropriate and all of those things. So I would welcome that opportunity. Thanks.
Yeah, I fully endorse what you just said, Julian, very much so. Do we have any more speakers? No. Sarah, could you bring up the recommendations, please? Okay, so we're asked to consider the content which we've done. We requested to form a working group to deliberate where future funds, existing budgets could be reallocated, allied with any public messages or campaigns, to consider any changes in approach following the data presented in this report. And members are requested to consider forming a working group to deliberate the sites of community concern policy, LTP and highway SIL, to support a review of policy to align demand management, resources and outcomes of this work. Is everybody agreed with that? I think we probably are, which means I won't have to take a vote. If you're not happy with it, please indicate now. Thank you. In that case, we will move forward with those as recommendations from this committee. I will now move on to eventually 9, Place Overview Committee Work Programme, and apologies that I missed item 8 before. If we can go to that, please. Daniel, would you like to present this?
Hello, Chair, my apologies. Daniel Webb here, Overview Scrutiny Committee. I'm aware my microphone's quite quiet. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'll turn my speaker off. I'll turn my video camera off because I have to hold it at an awkward angle otherwise. Obviously, we come to the end of the municipal year, and with elections looming, I have decided not to place sort of detailed work programmes for committees following the election period to allow the new administration and its members to determine their programmes of work. So as such, the moment only has 2 proposals.
Daniel, please stop, please. I think people possibly may not be able to hear you. I think you need to get closer to the mic.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, marvellous. So at the moment there are 2 items proposed that you asked to be considered at the April meeting. They are the Kpi annual report and the WSP annual report. Obviously this is presented to you as a draft work programme. In addition to that, you've agreed to set up a working group looking at sites of community concern policy and other allied highways policies. Which I will, which obviously you need to have a discussion about whether you want to do this now or whether you want to forward this on to your to the new administration, to the new committee after the election. You also have you've agreed to set up a task and finish group, so I will bring a terms of reference for that to the meeting on the 18th of April for you to agree, and then I can get set up with that. If members' officers have any other suggestions, now's the time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I do think the winter maintenance that Mark Barrow spoke about having meetings before the elections would be good to set up that framework. Nick Bardsley.
Sorry, Chair, if I might intervene just there a second. If you want to set up a task and finish group, there's an established protocol for that. And I'm afraid it is rather more cumbersome than a working group. A working group we can get done, we could do it tomorrow if we wanted. Okay. A task and finish group, this committee has to agree in terms of reference for that first. So I have to table it to the meeting, and you have to agree it.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much for that clarification, Daniel. Andy Boddington. Have I jumped over Nick there?
Thank you, Chair. I think you have, Chair.
We'll come back to Nick. Sorry. Go on, Andy.
Thank you. A few meetings ago, we thought of putting biodiversity on the work programme. We didn't make it a formal recommendation, which was perhaps an oversight on my part, and it still hasn't appeared. I think we really need to look at biodiversity. It links in with a lot of what we've been discussing today: highways maintenance, verges, the biggest biodiversity resource we can probably unleash very quickly and save money. So I think if we can put that on the agenda, it will have to be after the election, but let's sort of pass it on to our successors.
Okay, I don't think that's a bad idea. Mark, did you want to speak to this, or was it something else? Mark Barrow.
Something else, Chair. Sorry, coming off mute.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
Something
Okay.
else.
Yes, I'm happy to have that date to be advisable when it comes to the committee, but are all members happy for that to be on the work programme for a future date? If you're not, speak now. Okay, I'll take that as everybody agrees then. If we could get that put on, please, Daniel. Right, if I go back now to Nick Bardsley, I missed you before.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to raise the matter of the Shrewsbury Big Town Plan, which is on the list, but without a date. The deadline for representations, I think, is tomorrow. I'm just concerned about one particular aspect of it, and I'm sure Mark Barrow can provide reassurance on this, but having been a little bit involved with the representations about rural bus services and the proposals there to terminate those, as I understand it, at Park and Ride rather than going into the town centre. Having looked over the weekend, there are a very, very large number of representations expressing concern in very strong terms about this. I have mentioned it to the Cabinet member, Councillor Steve Davenport, who has said, well, it's all going to get sorted out. It would be very reassuring. I've got a parish council meeting tonight. There'll be a lot of discussion about it at that parish council meeting. A rural village, people extremely anxious about it. And I suppose what I'm saying is, I hope this isn't going to go too far down the track. That's the Big Town Plan, without somebody either being able to say everyone in the rural villages has misunderstood the situation, and that may be the case, or how it's going to work, because the concerns I think are very genuine. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Daniel Webb, did you want to speak on that?
I just wanted to pick up on an earlier point that Andy Waddington made. I just wanted to remind the committee that it did actually look at biodiversity at its meeting in September 6 months ago.
It did.
Can I just come in on Councillor Bardley's comment? It's just to reassure him and others that alongside the Big Town Plan master plan work, there's the development of a full movement strategy, which we're calling it, which will wrap up all of those issues on public transport, as well as things like car parking, walking, cycling. That's going to be coming forward later this year. Chair, I think a really good point by Councillor Bardley to make sure that the place overview get to look at that at an early stage in the new administration. So no decisions will be taken before that point, just to reassure him.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll be able to tell my parish council that it's not tablets of stone yet.
Okay, thank you. Going back to the biodiversity, Daniel, perhaps we could have an update from that last meeting, whatever decisions were made at that meeting and what we said we were going to do. Perhaps we could just have an update on that, if that's possible, please. I've now got Julian.
Thank you. Just first of all to Councillor Bardsley, just reassuring the Town Council in Shrewsbury actually voted last night to also call for a bus station in the centre of town. We absolutely support the rural communities in that, and that included the leader of the council, interestingly, the leader of Shropshire Council, that is. In terms of our work programme, I'd just like to highlight the fact that Shropshire Council voted last week that at some stage there ought to be a task and finish group on the climate and ecological emergency bill, and we really do need to do that before the election for it to have any value at all. So how that can be taken forward, I'm not sure. The second thing was just, and this is again something just to think about for the future. I would like to, at some stage, for us to start thinking about the issue of embodied carbon in terms of our place plan and local plan. It's become clear to me in some research I've been doing that, you know, however however close to zero carbon new buildings might be, you can have blown it in terms of the zero carbon targets for 2030 or 2050 if there's enormous amounts of embodied carbon in the building to start with, and that really a repurposing and retrofitting program for public buildings and investment really has to come before new build. And I just think it would be an interesting piece of work and an important piece of work for us to look at that, so that it helps to shape our place shaping. But that's another one for sort of, you know, the future, but really I'm just logging it as an idea for us to think about. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Andy.
Thank you. Just coming back to biodiversity and picking up Daniel's point, the September meeting simply presented to us a straightforward overview of what the council is doing. It didn't allow us to comment and to push forward a programme on how the council can change in view of the ecological crisis, the climate crisis, and how we can promote that biodiversity. And that's what I'm thinking of for the work programme. And, you know, yep, we had an update then, but we need to go further.
Thank you very much, Andy. Roy Aldcroft and then Mark Barrow after that. Thank you. Roy?
Yeah, I'll comment. That's it. Got it. Taking on board the business about the work party or the task and finish. I don't know whether members want to go for a work party then to make life easier and get that that subject moving. Because
which subject, Roy?
When we were talking about having a working party on the just trying to see now here, the highways improvements. Am I right?
Winter maintenance.
Winter maintenance, sorry, winter maintenance.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, just to see whether people wanted to go for a working party and make that a quick one. Thanks.
I'll come back to Daniel on that one in a minute. Mark, did you want to speak?
A couple of suggestions, Chair. Looking at your agenda for the 8th of April, I'm happy to work with colleagues, if I could work with Daniel, to pull together a quick group of members, whether we want to call it task and finish or working party, that sets that frame that we talked about for that that review that the new council can carry on with for winter maintenance. But we could do all of that by the end of March and report to you for the 8th of April, if that's useful, and then you could be a signed off piece of work for you, if that's helpful. And then the second thing was thinking about the overlap with looking at your agenda for 8th of April with the Kia bit. How about you've had some of that today? How about we give you all members a written update on that performance, but rather than talk about it, I think something really relevant at that time would be what are our plans for the unlocking of our places in the COVID context. So, you know, PM's announcement last week, how we're getting back to normal for the 21st of June, it could be something of real interest to lots of people.
Absolutely. I think that's a very, very good suggestion. Daniel, do you want to come in at all on any of what we've just spoken about?
Yes, I do, Chair. I'm just really just a sort of recap here. This committee has now committed itself to, and council between it has committed itself to 3 task and finish groups and 1 working group for this committee. You're going to have to make a hard decision on how you carry out that work. With the best will in the world, scrutiny support is me, and in the election period, I'm also going to be taking responsibility for induction for the member induction programme. So there's a lot of work there. So I think, you know, if you want a thorough job of this doing, then we can't do all 4 of them. If you want them all done and you want them all done rapidly, they're going to necessarily be quite slapdash, just because of the lack of officer time for these. So I think I think we can bring proposals back to the April meeting, but I think you know, you're going to have to ration the time a little more carefully here. So I think the committee's going to have to ask itself, what does it want done now, and what can it wait till after the administration has changed?
Right. Well, I would say, and I'm coming back to Mark Barrow in a minute, the winter maintenance obviously needs sorting now. I know that next winter looks a long way off, but you need to set in stone what's going to happen and reorganise everything. I would have thought that was important, but I'm going to go to Mark, because Mark, at the end of the day, I know the resource of committee officers is not in your remit and it's in Claire Porter's, but what help would there be for Daniel if we should go ahead, or if we would want to go ahead with this? Because what we're actually being is impeded in our job if we can't do what we want to do as a committee.
Well, Chair, of course, I can look to support Daniel as much as I can, and put some supplementary resource to that. Of course, what Daniel might say is, I need some people that are dispassionate and not in, with no self-interest. That's the other bit. So, I'm in the hands of other people maybe there, because obviously mine do have a self-interest. So, for me, if there's a priority, I think let's get on with the winter maintenance piece above all. And then maybe if we just can't resource those, maybe just move those other items into the next council would be my view. I mean, it's a call for you as members. If you want us to try and resource it, we will. But as Daniel said, we're quite stretched and we're running out of time. And I think the other thing we're conscious of is the focus of members will start to look to do other things as well, won't it, over the next
Yes,
few
and
weeks.
the other thing is the new council might have different viewpoints to councillors who are there at the moment and might want to do things differently. Daniel, do you want to come back in?
I think Mark raises a really fundamental point here, which is that task and finish groups are generally by their nature considerably more officer-led, so that impact of time is there, but also as well the weakness here is in doing that is that the members themselves become distracted. You all have election campaigns to embark on in the next couple of months, and I do have to sort of question how interested you're going to be in pursuing fairly technical pieces of work like this several weeks before your election campaigns. I think I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily an issue with all of this work. I just think the committee needs to think a bit more strategically about when it does this work.
I'm going to make a suggestion, which I will put to the committee, and it's entirely up to them, that we go ahead with the winter maintenance one. I don't think that's quite such a heavy topic as the others, and that all the other three task and finish groups are actually put on the work programme for the new council. Would everybody agree with that? Oh, yep. Bless. If anybody isn't happy with that, would you speak now, please?
Yeah, I'm going to have to speak up for the CEE bill one, because it was put before full council last Thursday, and whether it comes from our committee or wherever, I think it's a two-hour piece of work. It's nothing else. It's to have somebody in to present thoughts on CEE bill, which is easy enough to resource, to find somebody to do that. I think it's a one-off meeting.
Right, I want to be led by members here, please.
Chair, Andy Boddington. I agree with Julian on that, but an allied thing of looking at biodiversity again, I think can be after the election.
Yes, okay, thank you for that. Right, well, I'm going to make a suggestion. I'm going to take a vote on it. I understand what you're saying, Julian, but I do think it is going to be difficult getting people engaging with this. So therefore, we either go forward with two items, which is the winter maintenance and the CEE, or we go forward with one and the others are put in the task and finish group. So what I would do is, if it's all right, because I haven't engaged other members on this yet, I'll take a vote. The first one is that we just go forward with the winter maintenance one. So if I read your name, and then secondly, I will then put forward the two items of task and finish group before the election. So I'm voting obviously for what I've put forward. Andy Boddington.
Against.
Against. Julian Dean.
Yeah, against and for both. Yeah.
Okay, Nick Bardsley.
Apologies, for your proposal, Chairman.
Okay, Simon Harris.
For your proposal, Chairman.
Thank you. Roy Oldcroft.
For your proposal, Chair.
Thank you. Dan Morris.
For your proposal, Chair.
Pam Mosley has left the meeting. So Paul Wynne.
For your proposal, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's with a heavy heart that I move forward with that, because I do think the CE is very important, and I would hope that that would be the first item that's picked up. I mean, whether it's possible for someone else to have a look at it before, I don't know. Okay, so that we have a result there. Is there anything that you want to say, Daniel, before we move on? Because if I confirm the outcome of that item, we're just taking one forward.
I think we do need perhaps a discussion after the public meeting has ended, though.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. Okay, so the date and the time of the next meeting will be at 2 o'clock on Thursday, the 8th of April 2021. If there are any feedback or questions concerning this virtual meeting, or there were any specific difficulties, please can you pass them on to committee services, who will collate them and liaise with other relevant officers as appropriate. And just before you close the meeting, I'd just like to say at one point when Steve Brown was presenting, for some reason, I totally lost the meeting and I had to come back into it. This seems to happen when meetings go over a certain amount of time. I think it's an hour and a half, so maybe that can be looked at. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I'll see you at the next meeting. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.